This is how Russia punishes pirates at sea, with no mercy. They thought they could vanish into the open sea. But Russian warships don't play hide and seek. When pirates struck near waters guarded by the Russian Navy, just 450 nautical miles off the Somali coast, they triggered a response forged in Cold War steel. Swift, brutal, and backed by 30mm autocannons, supersonic missiles, and a zero-tolerance doctrine. Because in Russia's waters, piracy doesn't end in prison. It ends in fire. And this time, the lesson came in the form of gunfire, explosions, and oil-slicked wreckage. In the heart of the Indian Ocean, far from the laws of nations and the eyes of justice, a ghostly menace haunted the waves. A vessel moved silently under the moonlight, massive, majestic, an oil tanker named Moscow University. On board, 24 Russian crewmen and a volatile cargo, 86,000 tons of crude oil, enough to turn the ocean into a floating fireball. The water was calm, too calm. But beneath the surface, something stirred. At 4:17 hours, radar signatures confirmed it. 3 speedboats, narrow, fiberglass, and armed with RPG-7s, AK-47s, and belt-fed PK machine guns, closed in at 40 knots. The pirates, likely ex-militia, weren't just after ransom. They were after a $50 million prize and the chaos it could unleash. What followed was not a standoff. It was a calculated ambush. Within minutes, the tanker was boarded. Explosives were seen strapped to the railings. One crew member was pistol-whipped. The radio went dead. But the pirates forgot one thing. The Russian Navy was listening. 1,800 kilometers away, the Marshal Shaposhnikov, a Udaloy-class destroyer equipped with SSN-14 anti-ship missiles and 2 K-27 choppers, received the distress call. And from that moment, Operation Neptune Blade was unleashed. This is the story of what happened next. A clash of firepower and fury that would send shockwaves across the maritime world. The setup bait on open water. The Moscow University looked like an easy target, a slow-moving tanker drifting through pirate-infested waters, unarmed and exposed. Or so it seemed. At 8 o'clock hours, the trap was sprung. 3 skiffs, each carrying 5 to 6 pirates, armed with AK-47s, RPG-7s, and stolen comms gear, cut across the waves at full throttle. Warning shots cracked through the morning air. Crew members hit the deck. Alarms blared. A distress call went out. To the pirates, help was distant. The tanker was theirs. They boarded swiftly. Rifles raised. Orders shouted. Boots thudding on steel. But what they didn't know was deadly. This wasn't just a ship. It was bait. The Russian Navy had been listening to pirate radio traffic for weeks. They knew the strike was coming. Hidden cameras, satellite relays, a silent panic button. Every move was being tracked in real time. Aboard the Marshal Shaposhnikov, 60 miles away, commanders watched it all live. No scramble, no surprise, just patience. And the second the last pirate climbed aboard, the order was issued. Missiles loaded, targets locked. The game was on, and the hunters were done waiting. Silence from the crew, a trap in motion. As the pirates swarmed aboard, rifles raised and voices loud, they expected chaos, resistance, hostages begging. Instead, they found nothing. No crew, no shouting, not even engine noise, just silence. A ghost ship. What they didn't know, the crew had already executed Protocol Zvezda-4, a Russian naval procedure drilled for hostage scenarios. All 24 crewmen had shut down power, destroyed navigation controls, and sealed themselves in the engine room, deep within the steel hull. To the pirates, the dark ship seemed broken, malfunctioning. They believed they'd already won, but this wasn't victory. This was a countdown. As they crept across the decks, shouting in Somali, checking rooms, weapons drawn, they were being watched. From above, a Russian Orlan 10 military drone, locked on, streaming live thermal and optical footage. From below, sonar buoys, activated hours earlier, pinged silently in the depths, signaling the Marshal Shaposhnikov to move in. The tanker wasn't just bait, it was a kill zone. Microphones hidden in vents picked up every whisper. Motion sensors in the stairwells tracked every step. Infrared cameras logged positions in real time. They weren't on a captured ship. They were in a steel cage, and the walls were closing in. The Russian response warship inbound. Hundreds of nautical miles away, the Marshal Shaposhnikov, a Udalola-class Russian destroyer armed for war, received the distress signal. And when Russia responds, it doesn't arrive to talk. It arrives to strike. The ship surged forward at 29 knots. Below deck, two Ka-27 helicopters were armed and fueled. Snipers checked scopes. A 20-man Spetsnaz team was briefed. Orders were crystal clear. No negotiations. Secure the crew. Neutralize every threat. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a demonstration. Within minutes, radar locked onto the tanker's coordinates. The flight deck was cleared. Both helicopters lifted off, twin engines howling through thick morning air. Each chopper carried a sniper, thermal drones, and 6 commandos in full tactical gear. Below deck, inside the tanker's sealed engine room, crew members received a coded ping. Stay silent. Hold. Extraction inbound. On the bridge of the Shaposhnikov, Captain Ildar Akhmarov gave the order. Engage when ready. The pirates, still scattered and celebrating, were completely unaware. From above, through high-zoom optics, a sniper locked in on the lead pirate, an AK slung on his back, carelessly pacing the deck. One breath, one trigger pull. Crack. A clean headshot dropped him instantly. Panic exploded. The pirates weren't facing merchant sailors anymore. They were now in the crosshairs of soldiers trained in urban warfare, hostage rescue, and close quarters takedowns. And the battlefield. It had been built to bury them. Act 4. Eye in the sky. The strike begins. As the Marshal Shaposhnikov closed in, the first Ka-27 helicopter launched into action. From above, Russian special forces spotted the 3 pirate skiffs lashed to the tanker's starboard side. Exposed, vulnerable. No cover. No defense. That was their first and final mistake. The Ka-27 side gunner locked in. 12.7mm rounds tore through fiberglass hulls. One burst, then fire. The skiffs exploded into flaming debris, fuel tanks igniting, splinters raining into the sea. Escape, gone. The pirates, now trapped aboard a steel prison, scrambled in chaos. Some sprinted across decks, weapons drawn, shouting for hostages. Others pounded on sealed doors, searching for exits. But the ship had become a maze, and every path led to nowhere. High above, a second chopper circled, its camera beaming live thermal footage to the destroyer's ops center. Pirate positions were marked, heat signatures confirmed. Then came the green light. Execute. Fast ropes dropped. Boots hit the deck. Hard. Spetsnaz commandos, masked, armed with ASVAL suppressed rifles and flashbangs, moved in with precision. No warnings. No wasted movement. Stun grenades exploded inside crew quarters and control rooms. White flashes, thunderclaps, screams. Gunfire followed, short, sharp bursts. Room by room, they cleared the ship. Some pirates dropped their weapons, stunned. Others fired blindly and fell in return. This wasn't a rescue. It was a purge. By the time the final compartment was cleared, the message was burned into steel and smoke. Russian doesn't negotiate. It eliminates. And the sea. It would remember exactly what happened to those who thought they could hunt in Russian waters. Act 5. The assault. No room for mercy. Russian Marines fast-roped onto the tanker's deck at 8:43 a.m., descending from Ka-27s like armored ghosts. Each wore Kevlar body armor, night optics, and carried 9x39mm ASVAL rifles with integrated suppressors. Weapons built for close-quarters dominance. Team Alpha fanned out to secure the upper decks. Team Bravo, a 6-man unit, dropped straight into the superstructure, hunting pirates now trapped deep in the ship. Then, contact. 4 pirates armed with AK-47s and 1 RPG-7 opened fire from behind a stairwell. Russian commandos returned controlled bursts, 2-second volleys that echoed in the steel corridors. Flashbangs were tossed. 3 in total. Blinding light, concussive shockwaves. 72 seconds later, it was over. 9 pirates neutralized. 4 captured alive. 0 Russian casualties. The crew, shaken but uninjured, were extracted in 2 waves via winch cables to the Ka-27s overhead. But the operation wasn't finished. It was about to make a statement. The surviving pirates were marched to the center deck, hands zip-tied, forced to their knees beneath the rotor wash. Above them, the helicopter hovered low, blades screaming at 250 RPM, dust and heat whipping across the steel surface. A loudspeaker boomed in Russian. "You attacked the Federation. Now watch what follows." Then came the demonstration. Confiscated weapons, 17 847s, 3 RPGs, 12 magazines of 7.62mm ammo, and stolen encrypted radios were thrown into a pile. A thermal incendiary grenade was dropped on top. Boom! The explosion ripped upward, a fireball of orange and black, consuming everything. Shell casings popped. The deck vibrated. Smoke rose 100 feet into the sky. Finally, with slow, deliberate motion, a Marine climbed the mast. The Russian naval ensign was hoisted into the wind, white and blue stripes catching the sun. Message sent. Waters claimed. Warriors unchallenged. And far across the Indian Ocean, every pirate watching from a distant cove understood. Russia didn't just win, it warned. Act 6. What to do with pirates, Russian style. In most naval rescues, pirates are arrested, handed over, processed through legal systems. But this wasn't the American Navy. This was the Russian military. And the Kremlin had made one thing clear: piracy would be punished without mercy. So what did they do? They placed the captured pirates back in their skiff, with no fuel, no weapons, and no food. They left them adrift, their burning boats visible on the horizon. A floating warning. The pirates who boarded the Moscow University didn't just fail. They were humiliated. But humiliation was only part of it. The Russian crew filmed the wreckage, charred metal, splintered hulls, and floating debris. Then they released it to the world. News outlets broadcast the footage on loop. A message, loud and clear: attack our ships, and we'll make you vanish. No trials, no tribunals, just consequences. Some of those pirates were never found again. A few may have made it to shore, limping, broken, whispering about the Russian ghost ship. But even among pirates, tales spread. Tales of ships that lure you in, only to disappear beneath fire and steel. This wasn't law enforcement. This was a reckoning. And the Indian Ocean would remember. The message reached beyond pirate radios. It echoed in war rooms and embassies. Other pirate crews canceled missions. Shipping routes once feared began to breathe again. Because one truth was now undeniable: Russia doesn't negotiate with pirates. It erases them. Aftermath. The message echoes. News of the operation spread like wildfire. Russia released footage, attack helicopters, snipers, the flaming remains of pirate boats, all carefully edited into a message. Don't touch our ships. Somali pirate networks took notice. Intercepts recorded nervous chatter among pirate warlords. For months, Russian-flagged vessels passed untouched. It wasn't just fear. It was respect through firepower. Russia had not only rescued its crew, it had redefined the rules of the game. Ports along the Somali coast grew quieter. Skiffs once swarming the sea sat abandoned, collecting rust and dust. Even the boldest pirate clans issued new orders. Avoid Russian ships, at all costs. Russian naval commanders called it deterrence by demonstration. No speeches, no diplomacy, just action. And that action echoed far beyond the Indian Ocean. Western navies took notes. Chinese maritime forces studied the operation frame by frame. India beefed up its naval doctrine. But none could replicate the message quite like Moscow. Act 8. A new rulebook at sea. This operation would go on to be studied in naval academies around the world, not because it was perfect, but because it was decisive. It exposed a harsh truth. Diplomacy doesn't always deter lawlessness. Sometimes, only overwhelming power will do. And Russia didn't just project power, it weaponized it. From that day on, piracy in the Indian Ocean began to shift. New tactics, greater caution. And when pirates whispered stories at night, they spoke of the ghost ship, the tanker that looked abandoned, and the country that came to claim it. Naval warfare analysts dubbed it a psychological strike, a masterclass in turning fear into a weapon. Because Russia didn't just defend a ship. It rewired the minds of every pirate watching. Satellite images showed pirate skiffs turning away from Russian cargo routes. Merchant captains began requesting Russian escorts. Insurance premiums for Russian-flagged vessels plummeted. The message was loud: attack us and vanish. Touch our flag and burn. International maritime coalitions were stunned. How one nation, with one operation, had done what years of naval patrols had failed to do. Act 9. Pirates versus superpowers. Who wins? The standoff between pirates and nations is not over. Today, piracy still plagues parts of the world, but never again would they underestimate Russia. Because that day, the sea spoke, and it roared with a Russian accent. They came for ransom. They got a lesson in retribution. This is how Russia punishes pirates, with no mercy. In the eyes of the Russian Navy, piracy isn't a game, it's a declaration of war. And the answer? Cruise missiles, chopper assaults, and iron discipline. No courts, no headlines, just retribution. The sea remembers, and so do the pirates who never came back. If you want more raw, unfiltered military responses from across the globe, hit that like button. Subscribe for explosive breakdowns, and tell us in the comments, was this justice or too far? Stay locked in. The oceans are heating up.